This is Motovation. I'm Laura Joy Kingwell.
And I'm Chrissy Van. We're two dreamers on two wheels inspired by our community.
And celebrating the voices we're just lucky enough to discover along the ride. So if not already, like, subscribe, follow along, do what you gotta do to not miss an episode.
In our last episode, we talked about the kind of regret you spot in the rearview mirror. Those past moments you wish you could ride back and do it differently. Turns out, we realized there was more to say. So here we are at part 2. This time we're looking down the road. We're talking about the fear of future regret, the kind that bubbles up when you feel pulled towards something or away from something. But fear, comfort, or other people's expectations, they keep you idling instead of moving forward. We've all felt this pull. It's like spotting a winding road that calls your name, and even if you can't see where it ends. And maybe it's a career shift, it's a relationship change, it's a relationship risk, or a risk you've been too afraid to take. Ignoring it can leave you wondering for years what might have been. Fear often hides behind the question, what if I regret this? But the better question is, what will you regret more? Taking the ride and it not working out? Or never twisting the throttle to begin with? The truth is, there's usually regret on both sides. One brings growth, the other can keep you parked in the same spot, wearing down your self-trust. So today we're going to talk about how to use the thought of future regret as your fuel, so you don't reach the end of the road wondering what could have happened if you just would have gone for it. This is your motivation.
Lori, when you came to me and said, I think we need to do a part 2, I'm so glad that you did on a couple of fronts. Number one, I know in the past you've shared with me one of those videos. I believe it was a nurse that had worked at a hospice. This is going back some time, but it was essentially the top regrets of the dying. And whenever you see those pop up, the common thread generally centers around the things one didn't do but wish that they had. And when they are looking in that rearview mirror and doing the audit, they're realizing the risk probably would have been worth it, because now all of a sudden you're facing the end of your literal road. If you are in hospice, that is end of life. You are looking death in the eyeballs. And I know this is going to seem like, whoo, what a heavy start to start at death. But at the end of the day, it's something that we speak to, this fragility of life, and certain circumstances allow us to really connect and understand that we're dealing with that on the daily. And it invites us to participate in our lives, because if not, what else are we doing? So I was really happy that you wanted to address this future regret, because I know in our previous conversation, it was so many things that we look back in ourselves that make us cringe, ways we've behaved. And we really talked about how that can be such a tool if you're willing to take accountability and change your approach, your actions, your thought processes, and integrate what you've learned into your life. But really the focus today is about fear and those risks and those things that stop you from taking the step forward that are self-created in the mind. They are self-created in the mind, because we know when we decide to grasp something that we see in the mind's eye for the future, there will be obstacles for certain. But where we need to build the most trust before we do such things is within ourselves. So I was really happy that you brought it up, because it made me think immediately of those little reels that you have sent in the past that are so impactful, because how unbelievable to hear from somebody that is quite literally looking at death's door and saying, I wish I had. And if you're listening to this, you may have the gift of opportunity in the now to re-stoke a fire perhaps that you have inside of you. The second reason why I'm glad that you sent it my way is I am in a place of this right now.
Mm-hmm.
I'm in a huge place of this right now on a couple of different facets and fronts of my life. One is this creative ideal that I have been journaling about since 2014. And I'm in this phase of trying to embody and step into that version of myself. But you have to embody and be it before you are it. And in doing so, then you are. And it was so funny. I love how things always align when we decide to tackle a topic, Lori, because the gentleman that you sent me yesterday, I should have looked it up so that I could give the name. Maybe you know it, but that was
Is it
him.
Hindsight? Is it the
Yes.
guy that I sent you? So it's called Hindsight, but he's spelled Hindz, and then Heinz Sight, and he's so good. He's a YouTuber actually, and then he just like switched to, or he didn't switch, but he puts the short reels, but he has like 20-minute videos where he just like drinks his tea. He's like he's originally, I think, from Jamaica, and like he's just got these wisest words. He's this young dude. He drinks his specialty tea. Well, like anyways, he definitely check him out online. He's incredible.
Yeah, so it's super soothing, super calming. And one of the things that we drive home over and over again on this podcast is our tools. And to me, being acutely aware that I went through a really intense healing phase, and now I'm feeling the spark being reignited and wanting to embody this version and vision that I see for myself. I'm really leaning in, making sure that I have my solo time in nature with no distractions or AirPods. And I am a music junkie, so it's a lot for me to power those down. I'm also being very intentional with how I start my mornings. I mean, today I started mine not with a growth element, but I didn't pick up my phone, and I'm reading a bit of a brain candy book called Tomorrow, Tomorrow, Tomorrow. But at the end of the day, I'm starting my day with a novel and a book versus distraction of digital technology coming at me left and right. But the reason why I bring up Hindsight is because I've also been starting sometimes with just a little bit of brain fuel to stoke the fire. And I happened to click on him. I hadn't listened in a while. I went into our conversation, Lori. It's so funny how this happens. I went in our conversation, in the links, scrolled down because you've sent me some great material over the time. And I had remembered the voice. And I was like, I think that's the vibe that I feel like for my coffee today.
He's a coffee vibe.
Then I don't even press on the first video, but I wasn't looking at the headlines. I just kind of did a little scroll, press on it. And sure enough, the one that I fall upon, he starts with this question. If someone were to say they will give you $100 million to make your one dream come alive, what is that dream? What would you be doing? What would you be acting on? And the question landed so deeply in my soul because I was like, it's what's in my mind's eye and my vision right now. It's what I want to embody. And I'm starting to become unapologetic about retreating inward a little bit more than I typically do in the summer and all those facets. And it is because otherwise, I know if I don't do this, there will be an intense amount of future regret. Already, there's parts of me that cringe at former versions of myself for not having stepped into this calling or feeling, because I can't explain why. Like, logically on paper, there's not a lot of reasons I want to be a writer. I'm starting to say I am a writer because I am writing and really start to move through that. But since 2014, that's been a dream of mine. And it's so funny where those little nuggets start to get planted. So all of a sudden you're like, I want to address this future regret, which therein shines a light on my own journey that I'm in right now. And then one of the things when I listened to Hindsight that was so what we'll be discussing today is that fear factor. I mean, we talk about fear so much, Lori, but really addressing in his mind, he was like, maybe change your goals. Maybe you decide, I'm going to fail 30 times this month. Well, watch your brain rewire once you make fail safe in your mind's eye. In fact, failure becomes the goal because you're trying. And so I think what Lori and I really want to address are kind of those primary two lanes, because there is the risk of doing, but the risk of not doing. And future regret becomes past regret in our lives. And we do not have the promise of tomorrow. And so I think the sooner we wrap our brains around the fact that all we have is now and the present, and that we can rewire ourselves to live in less conflict with self. Therefore, what Lori started with, that self-trust, that's all in our capability, and that's all a possibility in the now. And if we step into that, it is empowering, and it's also how we can be of service to others.
Mm-hmm. The part where you were shared about on people's on their dying bed, one of the top things that they share is about, the regrets, the things that they really wish they would have done. That's a component and a piece that I hadn't heard yet or come across when I was a younger kid. But as I spoke about in that first episode is, I was always just really watching human behavior at a very young age. I've talked about that numerous times in numerous episodes, but where this kind of comes in the last episode that I spoke to is that what I had noticed very young too, is that adults talked often about their regrets. They talked often about, I wish I would have done this, like, oh, if I would have known, I would have done this and stuff. And we talked more about how I learned later of a different kind of power of regret, which we spoke about in the first episode, which was about taking those regrets and then doing it differently on the other side. But I also mentioned and just touched upon that became a big driving force of why I made a commitment to myself at a very young age, that I recognized that fear was this, like I keep meaning to grab it to read it out loud in one of our episodes. And I think it's in the drawer side table by my bed, and I'll have to go through it today and then maybe read it in a recording. We can play it at the end. But I remember sitting down and writing. I would have been in my really early 20s even when I wrote this, but I had noticed it even earlier in my teens, but essentially about how fear is this prison that we put ourselves in. And yes, it feels exceptionally real, but it's quite made up. And that if you don't recognize it and don't get a handle on it and don't make a game plan for yourself of how you're going to move through it, then, those handcuffs only become tighter and tighter and tighter by your own, practice, if you will. And then I also noticed how many adults, as years went on, how their lives seemed to get smaller and smaller. Not because they became simpler. I think living simply is a beautiful thing. I say that in the way of, now everything made them a bit more uncomfortable. Everything seemed to make them uncomfortable or feel a certain way, or they couldn't possibly, but then again, would talk about all the things that they wish they would do. So it was this contradiction that I was like, what's happening? So this young age, I remember being 16 even, and my motto that I would sing in my head every time I wanted to do something, but I, go talk to somebody I had a crush on, or go apply for a job, or whatever it was. And my friends even knew it was like, it's my life and it's now or never. I ain't gonna live for Bon Jovi. And I would fucking sing that in my head. And then to propel myself to go do that thing, it worked incredibly. And the irony is, because I was like this thing of like, you're not going to live forever, so go do that fucking thing. And then years later, understanding more and more about human behavior and about our brains are hardwired to want to keep us safe, because the unknown could be the tiger around the corner that eats us and takes us out. It's no longer the case anymore. Instincts is a really important thing about, safety and what could be a real threat. But our brain interprets, sitting down and writing those pages that you spoke about as a tiger. Because what if those pages don't hit for the other person, and then they don't like it, and then this is shit, and I'm shit, and then I'm not worth this, and then what's the point? And then I'm out of the tribe, and then I die. Like our brain's quite, like that's how we're wired. But when you understand that, you can say like, well, what's our antidote? Like if that's our kryptonite, what's the antidote, sort of thing. And so many people, the fact that on the other side, where people are on their deathbed, and that is one of the top things that's said consistently, probably throughout cultures, probably, you know what I mean? Like, it's not just the same type of person that's saying this. This would be people from all walks of life. You really realize how much that it matters, how much it's not a you thing. The fear, the debilitating fear that you feel is not a you thing. It is a human thing. But also it's like the grave importance, no pun intended.
I love it though. Well done, you.
Well done. the incredible importance of understanding that there is no if or and or but about it is like, that is a part of it, is like, in order for you to not turn around and be like, oh, I regret not doing that, is that you have to recognize that you have to become comfortable with your discomfort. Sorry, there's sirens going on. I can with the window. It's actually having, when you talked about like embodying a practice of it, that's one of the biggest things that helped me, because at the time, way back when, it helped me because that was my practice, is the song. Like, that was my tool. That was my strategy to tap into something that was bigger than my fear of rejection, bigger than my fear of my identification of like who Lori was. It was the reminder that like, it's all kind of fucking made up and I'm not going to be here forever. And so really, if at the end of the day I get rejected or hurt feelings, and I remember even at a time people would say, but like, you don't really, like back in high school and stuff like that, you don't, but have you really been rejected? Have you? And I was like, oh, yeah. I had a boy that I had a crush on that I shot my shot with, or whatever the saying is. Say that he'd rather, no, not saying, he did. He decided to kiss the inside of a toilet bowl instead of my mouth. And I was like, fair game, brother, on a dare. Yeah. And like, and that's a juvenile one. But like, even when I got older,
they're often the most scarring.
Oh, and I still was like, gonna,
imprint for future self to be like, fuck no.
Right. And it's one of those things where even later on, I had so many rejections, but the difference is like, and this was on a crush level, this was a job level, this was on everything, is the other differences that people kind of don't pay attention to is that I also said numerous times who I had crushes on, and I tried out for all the jobs and lots fell through, but lots landed. Mm-hmm. It's like everything where people are like, oh, you got a horseshoe up your ass. I'm like, well, that's not it. I'm like, think about it. I'm like, for every 100 people you meet and talk to, you might have, only half of them that even remotely talk to you back and say hello back. And then out of those, you might have 10 that actually have a conversation with you. And out of those 10, you might have 5 that actually said something that like really like hit, deep or whatever. And you might have 1 that you talk to for the rest of your life or not, and the next 100 maybe. But it's those things too of like, and that goes the same thing of taking those risks in life and going for those things. Some might not work out, but they're probably not meant to. And it was probably a stepping stone for the thing that is. But when you feel that calling, or you feel that pull factor, or you have an image in your head, or that gift is given to you in your mind's eye, all of the rest is so made up. That's about as real as you can get. That's the realest thing in the world. And that's what we tell ourselves is the made up part or the woo-woo thing. And we tell us like Nancy over there that's going to give a shit about my life. She's the real thing I have to be concerned about. What? But that's like when you boil it down. And I was really thankful that I just happened to be super attuned to human behavior and watch that shit, because I was like, there is a pattern here that has people in a state of misery. So how do I not fall into that same trap? And it looks like it's because it was like that became easy for you. It wasn't. I just started practicing earlier. Mm-hmm. It still hurt. It still was super uncomfortable, but I was like, I know what's at stake. And I think we have to remind ourselves what's at stake. Like, you are alive. You are here with your personality and your gifts and all those things. And like, what are we doing by trying to like, self-protect the most basic parts of ourselves that like are just to function to make, like, that's not where the magic lies. Stop protecting it.
And it's like curating yourself to fit the mold, your mold, because you innately know that it's not for you. You innately know that it doesn't feel right, to your point of misery or the amount of people. And I do not want to discount true reasons why people struggle with depression or anxiety, but you can't tell me that part of the equation is a lot of people being misaligned with the direction that they wish to go. And that compounds into all sorts of dis-ease in the body. Like you generally are creating that when you do not listen to yourself. There's two big things that you talked about that I want to circle on. Number one, the rejection. I feel you so much on that. I mean, Lori and I are midlife now. I know this because I was joking. I'm staying at my boyfriend's house, and every targeted ad I have right now is about my eggs. It's like, what do you want? You're a childless woman. Do you want to freeze them? Do you want to, you know, they're dying? Do you want birth control? Like, it's terribly confused, but we are in midlife. Just in case you're curious, that's the shit it serves you. But I bring that up because there is that level of wisdom and experience that happens with that. And much like yourself, there are so many things when I was in my 20s and even in my 30s, and I'm sure I'll still encounter them, but I will recover faster because of my experience. But I remember in my 20s, you know, my dream of doing TV and the competitiveness, and a job would come up and there'd only be so many out there in the country. And there were some that I applied for at the time. Like I remember the feeling when a posting would come up and my heart would be pounding as I'm putting together the resume, and I would be imagining myself there and thinking, this is my dream. This is my dream. And then you go through the multi-levels of interviews and then you're thinking, I've got this. I'm going to have this. This is amazing. Yeah. And then you get the sobering call of it's not you. It's not you. And I had some huge moments of being fucking devastated. Rejection feels awful. I mean, yourself like talking about, you know, this young relationship, a crush. Everyone knows how deep a crush, your heart's racing. You can't stop thinking about that. You're imagining yourself together, all these beautiful things.
He publicly kisses a toilet instead of your face.
Everyone does. You know,
he was like, willing to live with that over and over.
If you've been broken up with in a relationship, like any form of rejection feels fucking terrible. And no matter how many times it happens, rejection's still going to feel terrible. But I guarantee if you audit any time, I remember my mom would always say this, and I know we subscribe to this so largely, is like, you'll understand later why it didn't work out. Yeah. And I haven't had one situation in my life when I've looked back and I haven't been like, oh, like if I had gone that way. And it's not to say that path may not have yielded some great fruit of life, but for whatever reason, in the trajectory that I was headed in my life map, it wasn't meant for me. And the more rejection you have, it's like anything else we talk about, you're getting reps in. You know, the first one you can probably think of that you had in your life, it may have rattled you for an indefinite amount of time. You know, the next one, that initial sting is never going to feel great, but your recovery time gets faster and faster, and your fear bandwidth around it is getting smaller because now you have evidence in your life of, I've survived this. I've survived this before. Still feels fucking terrible, but I've survived this before and landed on my feet. So this is okay.
I'm in the cycle of it. Like this means I'm in it.
Exactly.
This means I'm doing it. It's hard, but it means I'm doing it.
Yes. Yeah. Yes, without question. And the other element that I really, really want to highlight that you said, and I know we had it in the intro as well, but is that calling or nudge, and really emphasizing just how real that is. You know, Lori, you've studied human behavior for ages, and, you know, you see these little sparks of youth come to life and see them come alive with different ideas, and how beautiful are we when we're young and creative and have a lot less fear-based due to lived experience. And for myself, you know, I've spent the last 5-6 years interviewing people at enterprise level. So we're talking a lot of founders and C-suites, and the common theme, and it makes me think of, I know that you've done a bunch of workshops as well, Lori, and the threads that become so common in those whose dreams came alive is at one point they saw something and believed in it so much in their heads. And oftentimes they have no idea where it came from. It was just kind of, I was going around and I had this idea and I just couldn't shake it. And so I had to bring it into reality. And those callings and those sparks are unbelievably real. Think how, I know that there's kind of two schools of thoughts on this, that at this point it's like there's no original ideas and all the rest of it. I mean, like to a degree, like it's sort of like so many things already exist or iterations, and we absorb so much of other people's ideas. But because I mean, obviously, let's face it, we didn't think we'd all be living in a land of AI not that long ago. So there's definitely new terrifying ideas, but you get what I'm throwing down.
I do. Yeah.
But even a book, for example, I'm obsessed with libraries. I have been since I was a child. I am staying at this one random street in Connecticut, and there's several independent bookstores on this street, which means they're in by, if I counted how many books there are in everyone's houses down the way, plus all these bookshops, hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds. So then you're someone like myself that says, I want to be a writer. I am a writer. And what an audacious goal, right? Because people have been writing since humanity began. There's a reason why you look in ancient societies and there are stories carved on walls. But the beauty is when we have these nudges or sparks is reminding ourselves that your unique bundle that makes you is the special sauce. And I'm not saying that you do it and you ascend to the top of a bestseller, this, that, and the other. It may just end up some form of expression that you have allowed to complete the cycle and express. What a beautiful fucking thing. And there's only one of that because it is an iteration of you and self. And I think it's just really important to never ignore when something is calling to you and nudging you. And it may change slight forms depending on how long this calling sat with you. That inkling or pull or draw may transform a little bit in your mind's eye. I mean, truthfully, I feel like that's your mind and self already working on iterating this idea into reality as it meshes and transforms. But I think that's where each individual's special spark really is. And the fact we have this opportunity in our life to play with that. Yet how many of these quote unquote dreams get squashed and ignored in the mind? And I think those are the things that we kind of speak of when it comes to future regret and talking about people staring at the grave thinking, fuck, I should have just done it. Like there's a reason why I was knocking on you.
You said that part, which is so important about, you know, it might be the bestseller, but it might not. And it might be the mind's eye of seeing that. And that was the propelling force. But it's still a part of this like enormity of an expression that I felt the pull towards. And also it brought out parts of me, or it started the process, and it could be 4 more books down the line and then it is the bestseller, but all of these had to get to there or whatever it looks like. And I think that's where also, myself included, it gets lost in translation. Because when we see it in our mind's eye, we often too, the fear kicks in and says, I could never be that, or I'm too old for that, or where would I even begin? Because like I'm here and that goes so far, like that version of me is so out there that like, how do I jump to that? Or
who do
also
I think
too,
I
just,
am?
yeah, like, or even those parts of, sometimes there's even nudges that aren't exactly the most glamorous versions. They're just a nudge to like go in a certain direction, but you're not quite sure what, and or knowing that you've got to get out of something that's not healthy. Things. And I think we try and
I don't mean to interrupt you, but I'm
Yeah.
really, really glad that you went that direction because yes, that's
we
so
try and
important.
figure out that like, is that end result going to be worth it for me to take this plunge and move through this fear? Like, stop immediately looking at it as what's in it for me. No matter what, you're going to have to make a sacrifice. No matter which direction you go, if you stick and stay put, you're sacrificing. If you go and move forward, you're sacrificing. It doesn't matter which way it is. And the point isn't necessarily in it of like, what's going to be your payoff. That's not the point. The point of it is that there is something for you in there that is for you to learn. Like perfect example, when we moved from the Caymans to Vancouver and I had this overwhelming gut feeling to do so, we were making the sacrifice of this this whole life that I had spent 10 years on a gut feeling building towards and moving out there and building these great careers. We had everything we could possibly want. I had a little convertible. I drove to work and then I jump on my paddle boards and it was Sunday boat days and like, beach days, and we didn't pay tax and like on paper. And I loved it. Don't get me wrong. It was one of the best experiences of my life. But there was this overwhelming feeling. Looked at Dave. I don't know what to tell you. That feeling's here, all those different things. We moved to Vancouver, which is an incredible city. Now, this is pre-meeting all of our Lita crew. And I had some really amazing friends that were from like my childhood that lived here that were amazing to be around. But the point is, as soon as we got here, we were hit with family illnesses and like we were in it. So I went from like boat days to like not a worry and just like doing me to being like taking a bus out to Burnaby to the hospital to help take care of my uncle and bring him to like all the things to help my auntie and, be in her grief that she was losing her partner. And then if you're a listener, it trickled from then on and everyone got sick. A lot of people died, a lot of grief, a lot of beautiful shit, the Litas and blah, blah, blah. My point is, not once was I like, why would my gut do that? Why would I take me away from my boat days and so that I could be around illness and a lot of sadness? It was that like, oof, this was a hard pivot. Like I was very much like, whoa, this is a pivot I did not see coming. But I also fully trusted and understood that this was ultimately for the betterment of in totality of my life here as Lori. Like my experience here, and without a doubt, it completely changed who I am. It made me a more connected human, a deeply feeling and the work that I had in my mind's eye that I was working towards in the Caymans and prior with working with kids and all it was one of the biggest puzzle pieces to that, to plug it in, to take my work to that next level in a way that I could have never done living in the Caymans and only having those really wonderful, pleasant experiences. And also too, if you're leaving something, you also have to go, you don't just get to step into joy and, that's escapism. That's not actually.
I was talking about this yesterday, actually.
And so it's one of those things that it doesn't mean you don't get to simultaneously get to experience the joy of what you're moving into, but you also have to go through the hard part of you probably have been in a state of not listening and ignoring and turning your back on parts of your life for a very long time. And not that there's a price to pay for that, but there's accountability in the challenge that it is to rewire yourself into the moving forward and a grief that takes place and a discomfort that takes place. And so it's one of those things, again, I really want to highlight the part of like, sometimes it's one of those things that like, if I was on my deathbed and say I stayed in the Caymans and all of this ripple effect for those 5 years that my family went through this, I might be on my deathbed going, I really regret not moving back to Canada. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's not the sailboats and the boat parties and stuff that you're just like, I regret not moving to the Cayman Islands and doing that thing and da, 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 da. And on the other side of that note is that just like the hike, a hike's a great one for it. Is like, yeah, you're going to get to that summit. That's why you go on the hike, is to like see the view and all the things. But like, you're also mostly going on that hike for the experience, for the hike and the leaves and the trees and the babbling brooks and all the things you see along the way. And it's a little bit of hard work. Your legs have to get worked. You have to drive. Like, it's all the things encompassing. And so a lot of times I feel like we see that mind's eye and we kind of go, I'm either not that, so why bother? I could never be that. Or the fear of what it would take to get there shuts you down. We immediately find all the ways in which it would never work versus just going like, well, what would be the most micro step of micro steps to like get curious and to just start? Like, it's not about the fucking mind's eye thing. That's the gift that gets given to give you a little nudge, to give you a little, kind of thing. And yes, keep it in your mind's eye as far as it goes of like the realness of it, because you'll get distracted by life and all the different things, but also don't romanticize it and also don't put it on a pedestal and also don't, you know what I mean? Like, make it a part of like, well, what's one thing I would change in my life tomorrow that would look a little bit more aligned with that vision? might be like setting your alarm and waking up slightly earlier. It might be picking up the pen, because if you're going to be a writer, you got to pick up a pen or a computer to do it. So what if you just wrote a paragraph a day? Like, it doesn't have to be like I have to sit down. Because otherwise we always go, there's not a good time. It's just not the time.
Mm-hmm.
God, if like it will never be the time. That was one of the biggest things I learned. It will never feel like the time, because your body will be like, you know what time it is? Time for some. My brain's like, time for a snack. You know what it is time for?
Snacks too. I'm like,
yeah, like our brain will grab anything. Yeah, I should actually, it could be even like I should put in the laundry and I should put in this. Your brain will find any way to avoid it. And it is, as we get older, we find more legitimate ways. Mm-hmm. And then life suddenly gets very real. The laundry doesn't matter. The snacks don't matter. Snacks will always matter. I take that back immediately. I apologize. Snacks will always matter. Yeah. You never get laundry. Laundry doesn't matter.
Snacks
but when you're on your
snacks matter. Podcast, laundry, no.
Snacks
yes.
Matter.
Snacks matter.
Snacks matter. Candy matters. On my deathbed, I'll never be like, I wish I ate less candy. But on that deathbed, nothing else seems to really matter except for those pieces that you felt the pull towards. And suddenly those things matter. That, I shouldn't say nothing, your family, the things, but that is one of the top things that matter. I wish I would have done that thing. I wish I would have tried. Mm-hmm. Like, if nothing else, like give it not a college try, not a like, I tried it once, it didn't work. I tried to lift a weight. It's so weird. My muscles didn't bulge all of a sudden. Like, give it a real, actual, consistent go. Trust yourself enough. But like, man, we're here for such a short amount of time. It's so rare that you're even here. I know it doesn't seem it because we're so overpopulated, but it is. And
so rare as you're listening to the podcast in a crowd of people getting elbowed on a subway line.
They're like, is it? I don't think so. I feel like I'm 1 in a million.
As you're 1 in several billion, but still for a short
in the universe. Yeah.
Yeah, I really like highlighting the trade-offs because, as you said, you're making one choice, you're sacrificing something else. And that is so true. And it's understanding that there are going to be trade-offs. I think it's really important to separate that mind's eye from idealism and romanticism, as you kind of said there. And the other element that I think is so crucial to hone in on is that we have the pull and the nudge, and then people are like, I'm going to excavate and renovate everything all at once. And that's a quick way to not embody exactly what you imagine to be. Like, as Lori says, the steps really do just have to be micro steps. And I know without question, when you do those audits of how you spend your time, you're going to find that there. It's always available to us. If you're listening to this podcast, I pretty much guarantee that you probably spend time on social media. That's the number one spot I tell people to find their time back, because I don't know about you, but when you know what I've seen so many times out here, Lori? People watching fucking YouTube while they're driving. Like, that's how distracted we are. I know, terrifying as a motorcyclist. Everything in me was like, you suck. I know. Phone propped in there. That's
oh my God. That gives me heart. Oh my Lord.
I know.
It's terrifying.
But something that does frustrate me is when you encounter people that become victims of their own mindset of that, deciding their dreams aren't for them because they're looking at the massive hike and decided to stay in the parking lot. And they're like, the parking lot sucks. All there are lines. I'm out of snacks in the car. Like, I'm getting poured in the rain. I haven't seen anything. And I'm just kind of like, dude, no one's going to do it for you. And it is going to be uncomfortable. But at the end of the day, do you want to be stuck in the parking lot your whole life? Fuck no. And every time you decide to not go and see the thing, and you're seeing other people come down from their ascension saying, oh my gosh, it was a journey, but it was incredible at the top. I'm so glad I did that. More and more resentment, judgment over their choices to build in your soul, because it's very easy to look at other people. I mean, you kind of said it there from the beginning that people said, what, you have golden horseshoes up your ass? And it's actually quite funny that you use that example, because I had a close relative use that exact phrasing for myself. And I found myself get really angry when I heard it, because it got shared with me by a second party. And I was like, they didn't see me sobbing for 48 hours when I didn't get the thing and was devastated and, was too young to understand that it wasn't about Chrissy the person and just was a circumstance. There are so many moments that we don't see when it's other people's highlight reels. So instead of spending your time comparing yourself to those that did, initiate the step and really think about yourself. I mean, you sent me some notes here, and I love that, when you envision, if you're granted 5 years from now, 10 years from now, it's like, what do you want that to look like? And then pair that thought with the understanding. You could create that. I think a lot of people just go day in, day out and just accept whatever circumstance is thrown their way as verbatim.
Yes.
And marry themselves to it with the huge misunderstanding that there is an entire other way. But also that other way is not going to happen overnight. Just like if you look at whatever situation you're in, that probably didn't either. But what are you going to regret more? What will you regret more? The doing or the not doing? Like, fuck, you're going to fall on your face. And if you fall on your face through the doing, you learned something. You're a different person. And that was one of the other things that I kind of wanted to highlight that you said was in regards to it not being the what's in it for me. It kind of goes to what I said in the beginning there, that ultimately these types of decisions are how we end up in service to each other. Because the way that you said it was so eloquently, all those circumstances, making this decision to leave beautiful sunshine, ocean, boat days, and you're faced with some of the hardest trials of your adult life in quick succession, but they've turned you into a person that has more compassion, more empathy, more understanding, more patience. And that translates to how we move in the world. And it sounds absolutely woo and ridiculous, but I'm like, that is our gift and ripple to each other. If we're able to have more bandwidth for the billions of others that we're navigating around. And the fact that you're able to do those things is having gratitude for your fucking privilege. You get to have these dreams. I mean, depending on where you're listening, I don't know what your circumstances are, but if you take a look around wherever you are, you're probably surrounded by a lot of privilege. And how beautiful to have dreams as big as you do, or callings as large as they are, and more than likely have infrastructure around you that are stepping stones that can make that dream come alive. I don't think we spend nearly enough time even being grateful to have the ability for the thought.
No, we don't. And what we have access to and the resources, we're just blind to it, because it's just the entitlement and our privilege to it just being there if we need it. And when we need it, it's for we want.
I said it and it sounded preachy. I don't mean to interrupt you, but I'm like, I get caught in that.
Yeah, we all do. Especially in the Western, culture kind of thing. Even like, so I volunteer at the Canuck Children's Hospice and Palliative. And one of the things that every time I go now and I come back, there's just such a deep awareness of like what my body gives me access to, that I can just get up and walk from one room to another, or that I can communicate, because there's kids that I'm there with that their communication is a smile, because there's no access to being able to verbalize what it is they're thinking and feeling. So all our conversations are through eyes and through smiles and through the most subtle of movements. And to have so many thoughts and so many expressions and so many ideas and the lack of, I even wrote in my journal the other day, because I was like, to not have access to be able to communicate that and bounce that off one another. And I was like, and I, as a talker, have spent so much of my life just willy-nilly, just throwing language around, without almost like to a certain degree being more conscious of the power of language and also the gift of it in the way of, and I have in regards to being like words matter and how do I communicate more clearly and concisely and to what I'm actually trying to verbalize. But I also just talk because I can, where there's so many moments where you're just like, you don't need to. There's no, sort of thing, like almost have an entitlement to language versus like understanding the deep gift that we have as a human being to be able to articulate our thoughts and our feelings and our ideas and to be able to speak to those. And so many people in this world that don't, and that we use that language and we use that speech to gossip about one another. We use that language and we use that speech to humbug our life.
Yeah.
Like those are we use our bodies to go and abuse it or not move or just like sloth about because the computer's there and the telephone's there or the our cell phone. And that was old school. Telly. That's how you know you're middle aged, is you still can refer to it as a telephone. But you have these, and again, even just volunteering there, it came in my mind's eye because after all of the illnesses that were taking place over those years, all of a sudden it just came into my mind that it was like, you've got all these skill sets to work with kids. You've got skill sets to work with neurodivergency, and you are comfortable in hospitals now because the bandwidth had to broaden. So you are one of the perfect humans to go into these environments and to be able to be, like to bring something rather than it being, because these families are going through so much. And just even that of like, and it took a year and some, I got rejected the first couple times that I applied and I kept, you know what I mean? Like, and there's no money. It's a volunteer. It's not, I do not have a lot of spare time, but it's not about me. Mm-hmm. But am I going to get a tremendous amount? Yes. I already just spoke to all the things that I've gotten out of it. I've gotten more out of it than these kids have from me already. I guarantee it. Mm-hmm. And so again, it like goes to those things of like, where they'd be like, oh, I should do this. And then it just becomes a thing. And then you're back to your telephone or you're back to on the phone gossiping or you're back to whatever it is. And that's where you're kind of like one of those things of like, I don't have the time or I call so much bullshit on that, all of it. Mm-hmm. I call so much bullshit on so much of it. And because I really feel this way. You have time for what you make time for, and what you make time for, that exposes what you actually value. Mm-hmm. You can talk about your values. You can talk about who you like to think that you are as a person. And this isn't a shaming thing. This is just a real reality check of like the human aspect of behavior and like who our cores and our like, all the different parts that come forward and tell us stories and the identification, all those things. Like you show me how you spend in a day. And that's what you value. And it doesn't make you a bad person. It's nothing like that. But it's absolutely where it's like, if you value protecting, your feelings or your thought, you'll be doing all the things to distract yourself. Or but if you're living a life of like meaning, and it could be the smallest of things, it could be sitting in your garden, planting. It could be, playing with your children, but like really playing and being present. It could be cooking and just feeling the food that you have in your hands. It doesn't mean every day, all day, every single minute. Mm-hmm. We're real people in real life in the world that we live in. But truly, like, and maybe that's my maintenance thing is like, watch how you move in a day. Hold the phone. We got a song to sing. Hold on. Hold the dial telephone.
Bring, bring. Bring.
Motivation maintenance. Please hold. Please hold.
That's my favorite one.
That's mine. Like watch.
As you were saying.
Yeah. Watch how you move in a day. Take inventory of how you move in a day and where you're putting your, like what you are doing and how much of your like actionable steps are moving towards anything that is what the gifts that you kind of get shown. They don't have to be big. You could have got an idea of a beautiful garden and and we live in a condo. Dave loves the gardens and the tree. We have a little mini garden on our little patio, where it's like some pots and stuff like that. Like you could do it in any capacity. The micro moments of it, but take and look at your day and ask yourself, have you done anything that day that is really an investment into like what it means to be alive, and that on your deathbed, you're going to look back and say like, yeah, I'm glad that's how I spent that idle Tuesday. I'm glad that that's how I spent that Wednesday. I'm glad that, or even like, I'm glad that I found 5 minutes in those idle Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturdays. And it's, Sunday, every Sunday I went full bore on it. Like any awareness and any applicability that you do in your life where you are not in the, how it just is that like zombie-ish cycle day in and day out, and your biggest high is talking shit about someone that's actually doing something, or they're mirroring a behavior that you don't like, and so you're going to project it on. You know what I mean? Like one or the other. All you're doing is living in a space and place of escaping your life, where your life is there to live in a full way. But it doesn't have to be all or nothing. It starts with those micro steps of living in your life, and then they build and they compound. And then all of a sudden you're doing the things that you saw in your mind's eye. And you're like, holy shit, I'm doing the things that I saw in my mind's eye. How did I even get here? And then you're like, oh, it was all the micro steps. But we get shown the shiny end result. And so we think because we've done one or two things that we should have that result. That's entitlement. Mm-hmm. That is, and you are, and that's, it's just, and that's what keeps you stuck as well, is that. So inventory of your day, where are you actually doing things that in any shape or form align with the things that you see for yourself in your mind's eye, or the gut feeling that says where I'm at and what I'm doing doesn't fit. I'm scared to lose it, but I can't stay here.
I know that we have a few minutes here, so I'm going to jump off of that.
Number
one, I just want to mention or just reiterate what you're saying there about if you're all of a sudden harping in your brain about what somebody else is doing or what they said or gossiping, just be acutely aware that generally what's triggering you is actually an unhealed part of yourself you may want to examine. Not always, but often that's what those triggers are. So there can be
almost always
there's things that are pushing your button.
It's often
more than likely as that happens, there's a lesson to learn. And even in a short span of time, I've dug a little more into that in myself of like, oh, why is that a ping? And then when I'm able to get really honest with myself, I'm like, there it is. I have some growing to do. But for this actually pairs really well with yours, Lori. And I honestly think just spend some time thinking about future you and the version of self that you want to embody. It could be something as simple as spending more time with your children and being super present. It could, and I shouldn't even say simple. In a chaotic life, sometimes that doesn't feel simple, and that's why you're not doing it. It could be the big, hairy, audacious goal that you're looking to achieve, anywhere in that spectrum. And write down one micro step that you can do that will take you a micro step closer to embodying that version. Because the minute you take that micro step, that is the ticket to embodiment. Everyone thinks embodying it is massive. It's quite literally the teeny tiny steps. And that's why Lori is saying, all of a sudden you realize you're doing the thing that you said that you wanted to do, thinking how the fuck you got there. We've just given you the recipe.
It's a dash of this and a dash of that.
And a lot of things that go remix, and you're like, that wasn't in the recipe.
Yeah.
You just got to move through those.
Yeah. But it also is in the recipe. Mm-hmm. It's just that like we have this idea that we're going to be given a precise recipe, and that's not life.
No.
That is not life.
Today.
I have two, just because the one reminded me a bit of like this week and last week put together. So that one that kind of ties the two together is by Franklin Roosevelt. It's hard to fail, but it's worse never to have tried to succeed. And the other one is by Sydney Harris. Regret for the things we did can be tempered by time. It is the regret for the things we did not do that is inconsolable.
I had a quote. I changed it. In the words of John Bon Jovi, it's my life.
My life.
Now or never.
Now or never.
I ain't gonna
I'm
live
not
forever.
Live forever.
I just want to live while I'm alive. I was really hoping you would continue the duet.
I didn't know, because that's the only part I'd ever sing. I ain't gonna live forever.
Real fucking time.
You've just listened to the
It's my
Motivation
life. My heart
Podcast
is
with
like
your
the
host,
open
Chrissy
highway.
Van,
Like
and
Frankie
me,
said, I
Roy
did
Joy
it my
King.
way. And
Thanks
I
for
just
joining us
flew
along
in
the
this
ride.
moment.
We've got new
Not
episodes
Frank
dropping every
Sinatra.
Monday, and we're all
I
about
did it
community.
my
So follow
way.
us on Instagram at
What if it was
Motovation
Frankie
Podcast
Roosevelt?
and visit our website at themotivation.com.
And in the meantime, tanks full and
Who
full
knows?
throttle.
Well, that, my friend, is your motivation.